Good evening. This is a test. Testing 1, 2. This is a test. I am testing on YouTube Live just to make sure that the sound quality works. Sound quality, hopefully the sound quality is good. Hoping that everyone is able to see the webinar. So let me click present just to get it ready. Okay, perfect. Perfect. I have someone helping me with the sound check, so everything sounds and looks good for the most part. So pretty excited. I see we have some people coming in. Thank you for those who are tuning in right now. We're just going to give everyone a couple of more moments to tune into the webinar. I know that some people are just coming from work and some people are getting acclimated and comfortable at home. So I definitely want to make sure that everyone gets to start at the same time. All right, it is 7 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. Hello, everyone. My name is Whitney L. Barkley, and I am the Chief Connector at the Barter Babes. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar this evening because I want to teach you how to turn your business from basic to booming with bartering. So again, as I mentioned just a little bit earlier, I want to give a few folks a little bit more time to come in and make sure that they're getting acclimated. So we'll start in about 1 minute. All right, everyone, let's get started. So welcome to this webinar. This webinar is for the bold and ambitious babes ready to level up through bartering. So obviously, we know bartering is an age-old concept that a lot of people have used throughout time, but more recently, people have started to use bartering more for business. So I want to teach you some of the techniques and tricks and things that you should start to consider if you're thinking about implementing bartering as a business strategy. So if you're following us tonight, I just definitely want to make sure that you all are using the hashtag if you're on Twitter, so that you can use hashtag BarterBoom, or of course you can always use hashtag the Barter Babes. And if you have any questions throughout the night, so if there's any pressing questions, things that you want to know, or things that I may not have addressed in the webinar, I definitely want you to feel free to ask. And just a few tips for viewing. So first and foremost, get comfortable. We'll be here for about an hour. And another good tip too is to make sure that you close the tabs on your browser. I find that when you're using YouTube Live or a Google Hangout, it allows you to view it a little bit more efficiently. Definitely view it in a quiet place. I know this is around the time when everyone's favorite show is on, but these are really important tips that I think that will really help you take your business to the next level. Also, please be sure to take notes. The reason I say that is because the replay is going to be available for a limited amount of time, only 48 hours. So you definitely want to make sure that you are taking notes. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to tweet me at the Barter Babes for questions during the webinar, or if you just want to share some of the tips that you learn with your friends. So we are all here, obviously, because we want to know how to barter. But some of us might be in different places, so I want to kind of make sure that I have the right crowd that's in the room. So let's say that you have a great business idea. The problem, you have no money to actually start. So this might be perfect for the person who's still in their 9-to-5 and they have a really great idea, but unfortunately, they don't have the coins to match that particular idea. Or you could be someone who's already in business. You're starting to make progress. You have some clients. You have people who, know about your business. You have some sort of visibility, and you're at that breaking point, but you just don't quite have the time or the resources to figure out what you don't know to keep it all going. And then finally, you might be frustrated. So let's say you've been in business for several years and your business is just not going quite the way that you had imagined it to, and you feel like it's going to close soon, or you feel like that you might start looking for a 9-to-5 job because you don't want to be in business anymore. So if you've identified with any of those things, then you're definitely in the right place. So today I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover. So you'll learn just a little bit more about who I am and kind of how I came into the concept of bartering. And we'll talk a little bit about the state of women-owned businesses. And when we know that women are starting businesses at rapid rates, but unfortunately the access to capital is not growing as quickly with them. We'll talk about some of the benefits of bartering. I mean, obviously we're not exchanging cash, but there are some other benefits that you may not have thought about. And of course, there are some tips and strategies that will get you started. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A just to make sure that I address any questions that you have. So by the end of this webinar, you're going to learn why entrepreneurs are choosing bartering for business. And you're also going to learn just some of the different tips and strategies of how to barter for success. I'll give you some personal examples of how I've bartered and how some of my friends have bartered to take their business to the next level. So you're probably wondering who I am and why I decided to put on this webinar. So my name is Whitney L. Barkley, and I am the Chief Connector of the Barter Babes. So I have a background in media and marketing, and I've worked in media, the government sector, and for the last 2 or 3 years, I've worked closely with small businesses and helping people cultivate their personal brands. So essentially, what I do now, I am an instructor at International College of Broadcasting. I teach social media, but I also do freelance work, and I also work on the Barter Babes. Just wanted to show you just a quick picture of my family. I currently live here in Columbus, Ohio. Just moved from Cincinnati, Ohio, maybe 8 months ago. And this is my husband and I, and this is our cat, Rosie. So again, you're probably wondering how I got to this whole idea of bartering. So in the beginning, I'll tell you just a little bit of how Barter Babes came to be. So in 2015, I was at a women's conference in Cincinnati, Ohio. At that time, I was doing social media for the event, and I would go around the conference and I would meet so many amazing women. So, they would be really great at marketing, or they would be really great at photography. But, they would tell me like, I'm doing really good in business, but there was always that one but. They always had some particular problem that was holding them back from taking their business to the next level. So I decided to just try to survey everyone and try to figure out what it was exactly that held everyone back. Now, obviously, different people had different reasons and different people had different needs. And it led me to start thinking about just in general, what the state of women-owned businesses were like. So during my research, I found that 1 out of 10 women will pursue entrepreneurship in the United States. That's pretty amazing considering some of the numbers. So more than 9.4 million firms are owned by women, and women employ 7.9 million people and generate $1.5 trillion in sales as of 2015. So, women are making significant strides in starting businesses, but on the flip side, the access to capital was pretty low. So we've probably heard a lot of buzzwords about venture capitalism and angel funding, and we'll get a little bit into what those things are later. But what I found is that only 3% of venture capitalists or only 3% of women were funded by venture capitalists between 2011 and 2013. So the numbers are looking pretty slim. Just in terms of gaining a business loan, women are less likely to receive a loan than their male counterparts. So there's obviously a big problem with capital, and people are looking for alternative ways to figure out how they can create a sustainable way to stay in business. So again, out of my own curiosity, I decided to conduct my own research. So in 2015, I reached out to 107 female entrepreneurs through an online survey, and I tried to find people who were just starting out in business. I really wanted to know what were their essentials, what were the needs that they needed to start their business. And the most common needs I found were market time management, financial resources, and also fear was really a large pain point. And a lot of them said that, they were looking for something else. And a lot of them mentioned that bartering was something that they wanted to do, but they just didn't know how to actually do it. So it started to lead me again to think about the different types of funding. So I want to briefly go through this. Some of these things you may have heard of and some might be pretty new to you. So bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is definitely a concept of where you're spending your own money to essentially fund your own ventures. Of course, some people lean on family and friends allow them to borrow money. And then, of course, you have business loans, which is what a lot of people typically try to go for, where you go to the bank, they give you a loan, you pay a certain amount of interest, and then once you're done with the debt, you're done typically dealing with that bank. Venture capital. So again, venture capital is a pretty big buzzword at this point in time. And essentially with venture capital, what a company does, they invest in your particular business in exchange for equity. So they earn a specific portion or a certain amount of your business. Then you also have angel investors, and those are simply individuals who is typically one or several individuals who are deciding to fund your actual business. And then finally, you have crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is simply when you're soliciting money. You can use different third-party websites, and you can also use different platforms to basically source money from other individuals. A really great crowdfunding source recently that I found was something called Kiva. If you go to kiva.org, Kiva will allow you to crowdfund, and it's essentially a small loan, but literally there are people from all over the world who are donating to your business. You just have to let them know your story. So there's a lot of great platforms, and there's a lot of different ways to fund your business. But unfortunately, for some people, some of these things may not be realistic, or they may not know how to actually go about them. So this led me to bartering. So essentially, we know that bartering is the action or system of exchanging goods or services without using money. So that is bartering. But what a lot of people don't know, you typically think about one-to-one bartering. But in reality, there are actually 4 different types of bartering that you can engage in. So the first one being a barter exchange. So there are hundreds of barter exchanges that exist just within the United States and even throughout the world. A barter exchange is essentially a third party. So within that third party, they act as a bank, and essentially you barter with people who are within that network. Now, the cool thing about a barter exchange is that if someone doesn't have, or if you don't have what someone else needs directly, they can still barter with you, but they'll be able to have a credit. And with that credit, they'll still be able to barter with other people within the network. So it's not necessarily a direct exchange, and it doesn't always have to be. Now, the thing with a barter exchange, essentially they have barter brokers, and these are the people who are responsible for looking at your transactions and making sure that you're reporting them to the IRS, which is something that we'll talk about just a little bit later. And then next we have one-on-one bartering. So one-on-one bartering is really great. This is essentially when you're partnering with other entrepreneurs, and just on a one-on-one basis, you both decide mutually that you have something that each other can offer. And the best thing to do is to set up an agreement that will allow you to establish deadlines, a timeline, and essentially get what you want. There's some great benefits to one-to-one bartering, and we'll cover that in the next section. And then, of course, there are bartering websites. Actually, this is a really interesting thing. In 2008, Craigslist, at the time of the economic recession, Craigslist had like one of the highest sparks of bartering on their platform. So people bartered personally, obviously, but a lot of people bartered for business. And also other barter exchanges noted that people were joining their websites at rapid rates. So bartering websites are really great because they have low barriers to entry. You essentially can barter with anyone all over the world, but although they do kind of have some precautions that you should consider. And then finally, you can develop your own personal bartering network. This is something that is especially cool because if you get a group of like-minded entrepreneurs who can essentially provide services within that specific group, you really don't have to go outside of that group if everyone is on the same page. So keep this into consideration as you start to think about bartering as a strategy for your business. So let's get to the benefits. The benefits are really awesome, and I'll explain. So obviously the first one is kind of the most the most thought of, and that's essentially the cash flow management. So, you're not spending dollars to purchase goods and services. You can exchange those services to pay for the things that they need to run their business. So again, earlier I mentioned that in the 2008 recession, a lot of people turned to bartering. And if you look at the history of bartering, people essentially turn to bartering during times of hardship. I'm here to tell you that you really don't have to necessarily always turn to bartering when you're going through hardship. It can be something that you use as a regular strategy. So keep that into consideration. But again, it's a great way to kind of save on cash. There's been instances where I bartered, for example. So I'll give you guys a really good example. So for me, more recently, maybe since January, I've been bartering with a licensed skincare professional. So I've been getting a chemical peel, which is a procedure that's maybe upward of $120-ish. And so with that, we've bartered me creating videos to promote her services, and she's been providing me chemical pills. So, over time, I'm going to save hundreds of dollars to get that chemical pill. And you wonder, how is that good for business? For me, I think it's a very good investment because, I want to have a great appearance when I'm meeting people. I'm constantly networking. I'm constantly going to different events. I actually just came back from Miami. So I want to make sure that I look my best. And a part of that is investing in myself. So, this is just a great way for me to save money because I think in total I needed maybe 6 chemical pills. So, I've saved maybe over $600, just in the time that I've been doing these chemical pills. So that's just an example of how you can save cash flow or how you can promote good cash flow for your business. The next thing that's really important, you want to make sure that you're saving time on researching how to do certain things for your business. I think bartering is a really great strategy because it allows you to focus on your business. The thing is, we all do this. We all want to learn how to do something ourselves, right? Sometimes it's not that we don't have the money, it's that we don't want to spend the money. So sometimes we go through a phase of where we're trying to do everything ourselves, and instead of hiring someone else or, trying to barter with someone else, we waste a lot of time and we take time away from perfecting our craft or perfecting our product or our service. So it's really important that you're understanding how you can use bartering to help you focus on your business. There might just be a certain area that you need, and by bartering and outsourcing that particular area, that can give you a ton of time to worry about other things. Maybe you want to worry about product development, or maybe you want to worry about specific growth. So, think about that as you start to think about how bartering can help your business. And then this is one of my favorites, building a portfolio and building credibility. This is really important. So for those of you who kind of fit that 9-to-5 but looking to start a side hustle or looking to start a business, this could be really key. The reason I say that is because for many people, you may work in a job where you're not allowed to disclose customer information, or once you leave that job, you're not allowed to use certain types of samples or certain things. So that kind of puts you at a certain risk, because when you want to start working with clients, if you don't have a portfolio that's already built, people are kind of wary of working with you unless you're referred by someone else. So it's a really great way to build your portfolio if you haven't built a portfolio before, or if you're someone who's looking to start a new service or to create a new product and you want to test it on someone. Bartering could be a great way to start getting those things out there, or to get those testimonials. So it's really good to, kind of look at bartering as a great way to not only build your portfolio, but it can also help you build references and referrals as well. And again, kind of going back to the references piece, it also can help you build a pipeline for future business. So the reason I say that is because you never know how bartering with someone can eventually allow them to become your customer. So I'll give an example. So I have a girlfriend who lives in New York City, and we bartered several times. I create graphics, so I've created graphics for her. She's helped me, with some Instagram tips. Like, we literally sat down and did like a one-on-one Instagram tutorial. So, we did this for, several times. And, after maybe the 3rd or 4th time, she's just like, look, I have to put you on my payroll because, you know, I could go to something like Fiverr and find someone who, you know, who can do something work for cheap, but you're someone who knows my brand. I know the quality of the work. I know how quickly you can do the work. And she saw that when we did a barter transaction. And it's really important to have a great mindset of customer service. And I say that because a lot of people have the notion that, oh, you know, I'm bartering, so I don't have to treat this person as equally as I would treat someone who's a paid client. In reality, you should treat everyone the same way, because you never know what that bartering client is going to do for you. They could open doors for other people who are in their network who are willing to pay you for their work, or eventually, you know, when they are ready or when they have a project that's big enough, they're going to immediately think of you and the quality of work that you bring to the table. So this is a really good quote from the survey I mentioned earlier that I created in 2015. The quote was, "I believe that bartering would be huge in helping me to achieve my business goals. I feel this way because it is very difficult to be an expert at everything. Bartering allows us to leverage a network of skills, not only those in our wheelhouse." So I really thought that was a great quote because, again, you can try to be the Jane of all trades and it works for some people, but for many of us, it does not. We're good at what we're good at, and what we're not, we can definitely barter, or, you know, and if you have the resources, you can definitely outsource it to someone else. So that is just one thought I wanted to leave you with. Now, on to the tips and strategies. So we looked at what bartering is. We looked at the different types of bartering, and we also looked at the actual benefits of bartering. So I want to give you guys a few tips and strategies to consider as you start to think about creating a barter transaction. So first things first, and this is something that a lot of people are just like, what? Like, what do you mean? I mean, obviously, you want to set a price for your services. So, of course, you want to do that in business. But something that I know that a lot of new entrepreneurs do, they go into business and then they don't have a price. Have you ever just been caught off guard when someone calls you like, hey, you know, can you do this? How much do you charge? And then you're just like, you're twiddling your fingers, and then you name a price, you blurt it out. And then, you know, once you blurt out the price, you realize that you probably set your price way too low. So I want you to start to think about your services. And the reason that I say that, and the reason that is so essential for bartering, is because you have to know what your value is. Because when you start to barter with other people, you want to make sure that they know what your services are worth, and you need to know what their services are worth, so you can determine how to create an equal exchange. So, for example, you know, you might be dealing with an accountant who charges $150 an hour, and you're a graphic designer. So, you know, at some point you have to figure out how can you meet halfway, and how can you provide the same dollar amount that you would in real life for your bartering services. So, you know, just make sure that you don't skip that step. It is actually quite an important step as you start to develop your business, or your bartering portion of your business. Next, you want to create a timeline for your services. So this is really important because what a lot of people do, they go into a barter transaction and they're really chill. You know, they don't really decide like, okay, I need this at this day at this time. You know, it may seem intimidating to ask or request someone to have something done by a certain time because you're technically not paying them, but that's how you really stay on track. So when you decide to create a barter transaction, you should have a bartering agreement. And within that agreement, you should create a specific timeline. So that way everyone is on the same page. You should know exactly when you are completing your work, and you should know when the other person is completing the work for you as well. And even within that specific agreement, you also want to make sure that you're really outlining the communication process, because that's where a lot of people get misconstrued as well. I mean, and this is not even just with bartering, just in contracts in general. You need to understand your prospective work style, or how you potentially work and how the other person works. And you guys should talk about that before you start to work together, because it's going to be really important to know how you're going to communicate, because you don't want to think like, oh, this person's blowing me off and they're not going to do my barter transaction. But in reality, maybe their communication style is not talking on the phone. Maybe they like to communicate via email. So those are things that you should definitely think about as you start to create a barter transaction. Next, you want to understand your limitations. So it's really important, and I think this should just in general for business, you have to know yourself, you have to know your worth, and you have to know your value. So coming in, you should always establish something of what I call a non-negotiable. So a non-negotiable is essentially what you are not willing to stand for in business. So what are you not willing to compromise? For some people, they won't compromise spending time with their family, or they won't compromise self-care. For me, I personally don't like to compromise my time. So, I'm only going to dedicate a certain amount of time to specific activities because I know that I'm the type of person who would get overly consumed. So I have to do that for myself if I know that I want to be successful. So start to really figure out what are those non-negotiables that you have in life, because when it's time to come to the table and try to figure out how you're going to create a barter transaction that's a win-win for everyone, you want to make sure that you already know off the rip what you're not willing to do and the things that you are willing to do. And it's really good that the person who you're bartering with, make sure that they know what their values are as well, because that can just kind of save problems and controversy down the line. So for example, maybe you're a graphic designer and you're working with someone who wants a flyer. Maybe your policy is that you don't pick up the phone after 5 o'clock. But, if you don't communicate that in the beginning and the person doesn't know, it might not be good if they're calling you at 9 o'clock at night or they're calling you all hours of the day to get a specific flyer done. So you definitely want to make sure that you're very clear about what your non-negotiables are. So that way, that you're not just savvy at bartering, but you're just savvy in business in general. And of course, reputation is everything. So, I gave you guys the example a little earlier about my friend and how we bartered and, and how I'm, doing work for her now. So it's really essential that you're thinking about managing and maintaining your reputation. So you don't want to just barter and have it be one-sided. If you're thinking about doing that, then bartering is obviously something that's not for you, because you have to come into it with a customer service oriented mentality. You want to make sure that you're serving other people and you're treating them equally. So one of the best ways to manage reputation, especially for those of you who are service providers, understand the balance that you need. Understand the amount of clients that you can work with at one time, and make sure that you're knowing that realistically how many paid clients you can take and how many barter clients that you can take, because it can get overwhelming to try to barter and then try to have paid clients at the same time. My personal recommendation is that if you're bartering with someone, I would recommend maybe doing 2 to 3 in a month, depending on your field, obviously, and the swiftness of the things that you need to get done. But I only recommend a few barters within a month, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself or overextend yourself, because obviously, people who are paying you think that they should get priority, and in some ways that they should, but you want to make sure that you're giving yourself a good balance, so that way you're able to please everyone and making sure that you're maintaining your reputation. And then, of course, as I've mentioned throughout the webinar, make sure that you're creating a written agreement. The written agreement is so important, because, again, people will go into an agreement and, they'll just go off of the honor system. I say that I'm going to do this, and then, that's that. Regardless if you're bartering with friends, family members, and especially in business, make sure that you have something in writing, because having a document allows people to go back and ultimately determine, if everyone is on the same pace and that everyone is on the same track. I mentioned earlier making sure that you have specific deadlines. That's really important. And then really making sure that you're outlining what the expectations are in the agreement. If you are producing a service for someone, how will you determine if that service is really completed and if the service is something that is satisfactory to the other person? So make sure that your written agreement is in place. It doesn't have to be something that's really long. Just make sure that it outlines what you are providing, what the other person is providing, and when it's going to get done. And there are some instances when you create a written agreement, and sometimes you have to put parameters in place. So for example, I have another friend who bartered. She's in the fashion industry, bartered with a web designer, right? So they bartered, and the web designer fulfilled her portion, but for whatever reason, the web designer disappeared, and the person who was in the fashion industry was supposed to make like a customized outfit. And, just given the fashion industry and the availability of the fabrics, it's kind of hard. So if that person who's the web designer decides to come back on the horizon and say, hey, I'm ready for this now, it might be very difficult for the person who's the fashion designer, because they may not have access to a specific fabric or to certain materials. So it's really important that you establish, not only the deadlines of completion, but you can also put in your agreement, when someone needs to redeem whatever you guys have agreed in that specific barter agreement. So, just think about that, and just always remember that if you're bartering, just make sure that you're writing everything down and make sure that everyone is signing it as well. Now, one of the little known things about bartering is that it is something that is recognized by the IRS. So bartering is a activity that the IRS looks at, and they want to ensure that, if you are bartering through a barter exchange and even some level of one-to-one bartering, they want you to report that to them. So make sure that when you're bartering with people, make sure that you're writing down your transactions. Don't just allow it to be something that you do and forget about, because it is something that you have to put onto your taxes. There are different forms. There's a different form associated with a barter exchange. And if you're conducting one-to-one bartering for your business, there is a separate form as well. You just want to make sure that you're keeping track. You should keep track of it anyway. And just making sure that you're talking to an accountant to determine what exactly you actually need to put in your taxes. So we are at the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if there are any questions that you guys have, feel free to tweet me or ask in the comments. Or ask in the comments. So if there are any questions that you have about some of the material presented tonight, let me know. Definitely want to be able to answer your questions. Let me see. I'm looking at the comments. This is good info. People fail to realize the importance of a written agreement even when bartering. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that is very important. So if there are any comments, let me know. I'm just checking in the comment section. And I feel like I saw a tweet. Give me 1 second. Making sure I'm not missing anything. And of course, if there aren't any questions now, and if there are any burning questions or pressing questions that you have, feel free to ask me after the webinar. I'll make sure that you all get my email address and information as well. Have you ever used any bartering sites? If so, which ones? So definitely recommend swap.com. I also recommend Craigslist. I've used Craigslist for personal bartering. I haven't quite ventured into it for the business bartering portion of anything yet, but Craigslist is a popular website. Of course, you definitely want to be wary. And, bartering websites are really good, again, because you have so much access to different people across the world, but you kind of just don't know who you're dealing with. So it's not a bad thing to use those websites, but you really just want to make sure that it's a bartering community where they're vetting out people who are, joining the site. There are some who just kind of let anyone join, and there are some who actually have a process. So like if you go to a barter exchange, they have a website portion of their exchange, and they actually look at people to make sure that they're legitimate businesses. So keep that into consideration. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that if you do join a barter exchange, it is important to note that they do charge to be a part of a barter exchange. So a barter exchange can vary in price. You can do a month-to-month price, or you can do an annual price. And a lot of them do charge for like a setup fee or a transaction fee each time that you barter. So keep that in mind as well. So even though it's good for small business owners, it may not be necessarily good for someone who's just starting out, but maybe someone who's been in business for 2 or 3 years, a barter exchange could be a viable option. Let me see. So I hope I answered your question. Let's see. What are the red flags we should stay away from a potential person to barter with? Oh, wow, Stephanie. Okay, great. That is an excellent question. So you definitely want to make sure that the person has good intentions. You want to make sure that they understand exactly what it is that you need. And you also want to make sure that essentially when you start to barter with someone, you don't want to give them a big project right away. So you kind of want to test them just to kind of test the waters and see what their communication style is. You want to make sure that, they're meeting certain deadlines. Like I wouldn't just, give someone the keys to like a website, right? Like if you know that you need a new website, I wouldn't just allow them to create a website immediately. Maybe allow them to create a landing page, or something smaller that you can see, and something that you can obviously still use, but you want to make sure that you're kind of taking the steps to make sure that they are someone who is trustworthy. I would say red flags. I guess a good way to avoid red flags, make sure that you talk to them and ask them for, people that they've worked with in the past. Very similar if you were hiring for someone. Figure out who they've worked with. Try to determine if, their work is good. Ask for specific samples of their work. I think that's probably the most important thing to do if, you're dealing with samples, or, like say you're a graphic designer or photographer, asking for those types of pieces of work is good. But if you're dealing with something that's less about, visuals, maybe someone who's like a finance person or a lawyer, figure out who they worked with in the past. Ask, and I guess the most important question you want to ask someone is, make sure that they've actually bartered before. So there's nothing worse than going into a barter agreement with someone who may not be familiar with the concept of bartering. And so you might have your way of doing things, and they might have their own notion. So I think it's really good to have transparent communication in the beginning, just to kind of make sure, because I think oftentimes you'll have an intuition of someone who's really into it, and you'll know if someone is being really one-sided. So if someone's, asking more questions about what's in it for them, and they're not genuinely concerned about how they can help elevate your business, then I definitely think that is a red flag. So let me see. Is there ever a time when bartering is not? Yes. So yes, there is a time when bartering is not appropriate. You can't barter everything. And there's one thing that I do want to make sure that everyone understands. When you barter, bartering is not a one-all end-all for everything. So I want everybody to realize that. Bartering is essentially a supplement to the other activities that you are doing in your business. So you can't barter everything. As much as we would love to do it, you can't. So there are going to be some situations where you may have to do a half barter and a half transaction where you literally have to pay for half of things. So, think about people who have like really like tough and complex jobs. Think of someone who's like an engineer, or think of someone who's like a developer. You may have to barter some things, but some things you just might have to pay for. I would say for really important projects, barter with a grain of salt for those super important projects. Like I would not barter with someone if I had not worked with them previously. And I'm trying to think of a really good example for you, Tina. But essentially, just make sure that you're understanding what your needs are, because there are some things that you're just going to have to pay for. And, and I say that because, sometimes the quality that you want, you just might have to pay for that particular thing. Great advice, all of it. Thank you, Jacqueline. Stephanie, I agree. All right, perfect. Is there any more questions? I hope I answered your questions adequately. If I didn't, just let me know, so that way I can make sure that I am answering whatever questions that you guys may have. I'm a counselor. Is a bartering a good idea for me? Okay, so Faith. Faith, I met you this morning on Instagram. Hello, thank you, and I appreciate you for joining me. So if I remember correctly, you are a marriage counselor. So I can see you bartering. I kind of see counselors and coaching and people who are coaches as great people who can still barter. So if you're a marriage counselor, maybe you're counseling someone who is I like to use graphic designer because I like to make graphics. I'm sorry, I'm like really biased, but maybe you're bartering with someone who's a graphic designer, and maybe they've expressed to you that they're having problems in their marriage, and maybe you can barter with them so many sessions for so many graphic designs every month. So maybe every month, they do a total of 5 different designs, and those 5 designs equates for one session that you actually have. So you really just have to understand what your needs are, and really find someone who has a good a need for what you have to offer as well. So, you're a counselor, but if you have other skills, so think about that too. If there are other skills that you have made money from, or other skills that that you can use to help someone else, make sure that you're considering that as well. So I hope that answered your question. So good questions. Is there anything else? Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? Any more? Again, if you don't have any questions, you can definitely email me. You can email me at Whitney at thebarterbabes.com. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well at the Barter Babes. So if there's anything that I didn't address tonight, please let me know. Great. Yes, she answered my question. Good, good. That makes me excited. Okay, so we are going to move on. This is good. I feel like I'm like flying through this. So thank you for bearing with me, you guys. All right. So again, I am Whitney Barkley, and I am the chief connector at the Barter Babes. Just to kind of give you guys some context, I started Barter Babes in 2015. It's been an amazing journey so far. I've been able to, travel to different cities because people have heard of this concept. And, I've also had the privilege of being part of something last year called Project Entrepreneur. So if I have any female entrepreneurs who are in this webinar, please look them up. Project Entrepreneur is a great way to really pitch your business and talk to different people. But really, I had a lot of guidance and mentorship just under Project Entrepreneur, and it kind of helped me kind of hash out what Barter Babes should be. So for you guys, Barter Babes, essentially what we are an education and networking community that helps female entrepreneurs remove business barriers through the exchange of services. So I really want to emphasize education, because education is something that's important to me. Again, when I took the survey in 2015, so many women said, I want to barter, I want to do this. And then they're like, Whitney, how do I do this? And I'm just like, okay, well, this is how you do it, or this is what you do. And, I think a lot of people can be really successful bartering if they knew the right way of how to actually do it. So you might wonder, okay, what is exactly the right way? So obviously starting with some of the tips that I gave you tonight is a great way, but I want to tell you guys about a course that I've developed. I'm really excited about it. It's called the Barter Babes Academy. So the Barter Babes Academy is an intensive online course that helps you learn the fundamentals of bartering. So essentially, we would go over a lot of the things that we talked about tonight, but actually a lot more in depth. So there's 4 different modules. Contains videos, worksheets, templates, and quizzes, and real-life scenarios that will allow you to understand how you can use bartering for your business. Now, the actual course is valued at $97, but if you are interested in the course tonight and up until Friday at 11:59 p.m., there will be a webinar special for $47. So $47 even for this course. A lot of stuff that's in this course. Again, I told you guys in the beginning that I'm an instructor at the International College of Broadcasting. So, I bring a very analytical and academic background to a lot of these things. But realistically, I also bring a lot of real life experience. And I created the course in a way that will allow you to think critically of how bartering will be a great strategy for your business. So the course is really great, again, and a lot of people have asked me, especially people in my Facebook community, I've gotten a lot of questions over the week, how do you become a Barter Babe? How do you be a part of this? So the course is a prerequisite to Barter Babe, meaning that I want everyone who comes into Barter Babes having the same level of knowledge and understanding and have the confidence to know how to barter. So when you come into Barter Babes, you are going to be meeting people who have taken the exact same course that you have, and ultimately, you'll feel more comfortable about actually bartering with that particular person. So what membership looks like is a 1-year membership. So we have a premium and basic level. You get a digital workbook that will go along with your course. You'll get access and listings to the directory of official babes. We have an online community using the Mighty Bow platform. And then we also do a new member spotlight, and it's not listed here, but we also do Barter Blast. So essentially what a Barter Blast is once you sign up, if you have a specific need, every week there will be an email that goes out to the network of women who are in Barter Babes, and we're basically advertising your specific needs at that given point in time. And then of course there'll be special discounts to workshops and events like this. I decided to do this for free because, again, it's all about being accessible. Access is really the biggest thing for me. I want people to know that there are other options outside of the mainstream ways of funding for your business. And just for me, bartering has been a lifesaver. So there's a quote that I definitely want you all to think about. And the quote is, "The way to achieve your own success is to be willing to help someone else get it first." And I really think that if you are, in Barter Babes, and really just if you have a good mentality of bartering, you want to be able to help someone. And I feel like with the state of women-owned businesses, we have to be very diligent in making sure that we're all going to be successful. We have to build each other up to make sure that we all get to the level that we need to get to. I mean, I know it's easy to want to be independent, but I believe in interdependence. So we have to lean on one another to make sure that we're getting everything that we're getting. And we also have to make sure that we're not being selfish with our gifts. Every single last one of us has something that can help someone go to the next level. I mean, there's been countless times where, you know, something that's just so basic to me has literally helped change someone's business because I've possessed that knowledge. So it's really good, you know, if you have that mentality to want to help someone do something else. And I really think bartering is essentially that beneficial way to, you know, be able to give back and also to be able to have something that's given to you in return. So again, the course is $47. So that is until Friday, March 3rd at 11:59. If you want to look at the course, there's actually a sample lesson on the course. So if you look at the link, it's bit.ly/Barter Babes Academy. So this is what you will use to access the course. Using this link, you'll learn about the different modules, what's included, and, you know, hopefully you'll get a better feel and understanding. Of course, if there are questions that are not answered on the landing page, please let me know because I definitely want to make sure that I'm answering it. So enrollment starts today, but it ends on March 20th. So March 20th will be the first cohort of people to go through this course. So you will be essentially a part of the first ever cohort to go through this, and I just think it'd be amazing. I have, you know, things planned for the cohort. So essentially there will be a Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, if you have questions about the material that you learned in the course, I'm in Facebook 24/7 all day. And I essentially also plan to do something similar to this just within the Facebook groups, just a live session that will answer any questions that people may have about the material. So that is so true. Sorry, guys. I'm just looking at the comments. I'm trying to multitask here. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So again, this is the Barter Babes Academy. So I'm proud to present it. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know. So if there are no other questions tonight, I definitely want to say thank you all for joining in. I've had a fabulous time explaining some of the information that I've gotten. There's actually a ton more information, probably more that you could probably imagine. But I'm just glad that I was able to get some of the essentials, and hopefully you're able to use it. What is the link to sign up? Oh, the link to sign up. Let me see if I can type it in. Barter. Let's see. bit.ly/Barter Babes Academy. Boom. Okay. Ooh, Google removed web addresses. Okay. So so Google didn't let me do it. I just tried to type it in, but for whatever reason, it removed my web address. So what I'm going to do, following this webinar, you guys will get an email of the information provided tonight. There will be the replay, obviously, and then also I will make sure that I send the link to the Barter Babes Academy. But it's for you, Jacqueline, it's bit.ly/Barter Babes Academy. So again, I appreciate everyone for watching. This has been amazing to just, you know, share what I've learned with you. And if you all have any experiences with bartering, or if you're more curious about bartering, just feel free to hit me up. I'm pretty accessible. I definitely love to answer questions. So thank you all again. I really appreciate it. And us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram at the Barter Babes. And if you guys, especially on Instagram, we actually just finished doing 28 days of bartering tips on our Instagram. So, you know, if you want to just kind of get some good tips and try to figure it out, definitely look back at our previous posts on Instagram, because I definitely think it will be helpful moving forward in the future. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.